In this video, I'll be showing you how I automate Meta Ads monthly slides with AI insights using N8N, and the sample report that you'll be generating will look something like this over here. By the end of this video, I'll be showing you the exact N8N workflow that I've used to automate this kind of report. I'll also explain every single note so that you can recreate it by yourself. In all transparency, I have to give credit to this platform called Marketfact. They are a platform with a lot of marketing workflow templates. I just took inspiration from what they did and I literally used their free template and recreated the automation of this slide using this N8N workflow over here. I've also noticed other YouTubers like N8N. The template seems to be very similar, so I can't help to think that everyone is just taking a lot of inspiration from Marketfact. I'll need to give credit where it's due. I really do think their templates are pretty solid. Essentially, you just need to press one button and let the workflow run. Okay, so let's take a look at this platform, right? It's essentially right now generating all the insights. I will say I need to probably censor some of this information because it's actually using client-sensitive data, but there you can see the change in terms of the variables accordingly. So this is what I like, right? It essentially helps you take screenshots and puts in all the video ads for you. You can see all these are just placeholders. In the N8N workflow, they are essentially nodes that just find specific placeholders and then replaces the text accordingly. So if I can see here, right, the ad portion of this is running and it's still downloading the file, right? I will go through this in extreme detail later, but I just want to show you essentially what is possible. It's almost done. There are 6 ads. It's extracting the top 6 ads. And if I can go back over here, right, it should appear anytime now. Okay, you can see everything populating with one single click, right? I have everything that's like populated. This is where this template shines, right? Because traditionally, you would usually need a media buyer to like take screenshots here and there. But with a single click, you can actually automate a monthly report. I'll be going through in detail, specific, step by step, how all this happens on the N8N workflow on the back end. Very quickly, this video assumes that you run some meta ads and understand the basic reporting funnel. And you know that data without insights is just a spreadsheet, right? So you want some form of data storytelling in your slides. Who is this workflow for? Mostly agencies that know the dread of the first week of every month. You're not scaling accounts, you're stuck in screenshot hell. And there's a lot of manual data entry, and reporting can take up easily 20% of a media buyer's time. And ideally, you want a media buyer to spend more time like strategizing instead of like taking screenshots. Before I move on, I will also say that every agency reports things in a slightly different manner. One thing I will recommend for any agency thinking of templatizing their reporting is to make sure that you have a template in mind. This template, actually, in my opinion, doesn't even meet the standard, or at least the standard I use when it comes to reporting to my own clients when it comes to media buying. But I would say this is a very good start, where you're essentially pulling information directly via API and just putting the data here immediately, right? So you don't have to do a lot of manual, dirty data work where, okay, you're checking the impressions on the platform, then putting it over here. The easy work is done because essentially you have unique placeholders here for every single metric that you want to put in your report. Does this completely replace media buyers and reporting? I don't think so, but it gets maybe 80% of the report done so that the media buyer can focus more on the 20% that makes the report excellent for their clients. The first thing I have in this N8N workflow is a schedule trigger. You can have it trigger every month, every week, depending on how intensive your reporting needs are. For this whole section here, in full transparency, I won't go deep into it, but you essentially need a Facebook token. The second core section of this workflow duplicates the templates that you want to use in your reporting. So in this case, I have these set up accordingly. These are just workflows that I can copy paste, after which it will then spit out a unique ID that is specific to the copied presentation. So in this case, we are copying 2 files. We are copying one PPT file and we are also copying one Excel sheet file. The reason why we are copying an Excel sheet file is because we need it to create the graph to then be sent to Google Slides for your report. After you copy the slides, I then have a note here which extracts the date range analysis on a monthly basis, right? So I have the start date and the end date. The date I'm making this video is 27 December. It then extracts the date of the latest month. In this case, it's 30th November. I have the start date to be on 1st June and the reporting period is on 1st June to 30th November. If let's say January comes, then this will extract the data from 1st July 2025 to December 31st, 2025. The next note here then extracts data for the past 6 months, and you can see here, this is the URL I'm using for the HTTP request. I've removed my ad account ID for now as they are client sensitive details. Make sure you use the right version of the API. As of 27 December, it's version 24 for now. The fields that I'm extracting would be reach, spends, action, action values, date start, date stop, clicks and impressions. You have the time range over here. You have the limit. Time increment I've put here monthly because I don't want to pull so much data on a daily basis. So monthly would be fine for me. This is where it's super important to think of the kind of report you want. In the template that they have over here, right, you're essentially extracting the data based on what you need in your report. So in this case, you can see here, the objective of this slide is to have cost versus reach month on month. And that's the reason why in my N8N workflow, I have reach on a monthly basis. If let's say you want purchase on a monthly basis, of course your API pool would then be something different. Templates like this, in all transparency, I don't really find it helpful because I know every company, every agency, every freelancer, every media buyer reports things on a slightly different way. Every client also looks at things in a slightly different manner, and that's where I feel like this template wouldn't be so helpful. But I hope that this video can sort of structure and help you think in terms of, okay, if you were to, let's say, create a template for your existing client, right, you need to think in terms of the slides you want to templatize, and you want to think of the common questions that your clients always ask you. What are the common things that your clients always pay attention to? And then you create a system to then automate slides around that, rather than creating a templatized slide where your client doesn't even care about the numbers over here. So at the end of the day, that's why I don't like these kind of nuances when it comes to templates, because not all templates suit all clients. And I feel like that's quite common sense, but there is a need to really adjust your reports based on the people that you're talking to. Moving on, you have the authorization here. You need to insert your access token here. You need to make sure that you have a Facebook app for it. If you don't have a Facebook app, you need to create it and get an access token to pull your data via API. The next note here splits things out accordingly into months. And you can see here, this is then structured in a very nice way. This performance slide overview only replaces data on this slide, which is the performance overview slide. Everything you see here is then handled by this section of the workflow over here. So you can see here, let me click and show you the prompt accordingly. Here is the latest monthly performance for the latest month compared to the previous month. Your impressions, the change in delta, click CTR, cost CPC, all the data that you need is over here, right? So you can see here, these are the specific variables that I'll just plonk in over here and automate accordingly. So you can see in my template, right, every one of these looks very ugly. This workflow is meant to suit whatever I have here. So you can see here, I have a replace text in a presentation note over here. I'm searching for gs_impressions_val. So you can see here, gs impressions_val. I know you can't see val because the template is so messy. This is the thought process when it comes to automating a report. I then repeat this for every single one of them over here. You can see it's actually a lot of metrics that you need to replace. That's where the work begins, on the template itself rather than the workflow itself. So you need to prepare the template first before you even put the workflow together. So that's my biggest recommendation if you ever want to think of automating your reporting. Moving on to the next slide, we have the cost versus reach month-on-month analysis. So this is the template that's provided. And then you can see here, this gathers the performance overview of all the data that I need accordingly. I have a code note to condense the data from the HTTP request from the API into something simpler, which is what I need over here. So I do extract month, impression, click, spend, reach, purchase value, add to carts, checkout, CTR, CPC, CPM, cost per purchase, average order value, and ROAS. This is for e-commerce client. The reason why I have this code note over here, because the data from the API itself tends to be very overwhelming. You can see here for the action type, right? There's many action types. There's on-site, conversion, total messaging, connection. And when you request for action type can mean purchase, it can mean search, a conversion, FB pixel, add to wish list. It can mean a link click. When you request for action type, the Facebook API essentially spits out so much data to use. That's the reason why you need a code note like this to then consolidate everything you need to just the data you want, because there's no need for you to get so much data. So I have this note over here, and you can see here, I then structure the data in a very nice manner on a monthly basis. June, July, August, September, October, November. I have the impression clicks and all the associated value meaningful for an e-commerce account. The next thing I do here is then send the data to an Excel sheet. And why do I want to send it to an Excel sheet? Is because I want to create a graph. And why do I want to create a graph? This is because this graph will then be automated to be pasted in the Google slide. So the next note here, get the slides from the presentation itself. So this, you can see here, then extracts the slides from this PPT that was copied over. Why do I want to copy it over? Because I want to get the slide ID. I need to know the specific slide to then copy the graph to paste into. Every slide you see on Google Slide has an ID, and this is the magic ID that you want to make sure that you copy the graph into the right slide. Let me give you a warning here. when you pull slides from a presentation, right, it will be quite overwhelming. It tends to make your N8N lag a little bit. You can see how I then have an aggregate node to then aggregate all the slide IDs. I then move on to this node here. It then extracts the third slide. So the good news for Google Slides, right, every Google slide file has a different ID, but the slide ID within the same template is always the same. So you can see here slide 1, slide 2, slide 3. If I duplicate this, the slide ID is always the same, but the ID of the presentation is different. So you can see the ID of this presentation starts with 13PYD7WU. So if I duplicate this, I would then have a different ID, but my slide would then be the same. So this is something you'll take note of when you want to automate inserting graphs into the right slide. I then move on to the next node here, which is to update the chart. So if I click into it, you can see that I'm using this URL over here. Feel free to copy it if you want. And you need to make sure that you insert your Google Slides credentials. So in layman terms, we are wanting to send this chart over here into this slide over here. So what do you need to prepare before you send it over? The first thing you need to do is to have your spreadsheet ID ready. The spreadsheet ID is something that we copied previously, so we can dynamically take this ID and then make sure that it's updated over here. The next thing you need is a chart ID. So you can see here it's 13847878884. To find a chart ID, you need to right click here, click on publish the chart. Then you can see here the pub chart ID, pub chart OID 13847878884. So this number should match what is over here. So essentially telling the API, get this specific chart to then put it into the Google Slides accordingly. So these are the things that you need to prepare for the API pull from Excel sheet over to Google Slides. And the next thing you need to put is the X and Y axis, because Google doesn't really know where to put it in the slides. And for this, I'll actually recommend you to test and learn, right? So in this case, I've put a x-axis of 32, I believe 3.2 million and negative 3675 for the y-axis. Feel free to just put it anywhere, but I would say you need to fine-tune this. After we update the chart, so this sends the chart over, and then we have this Excel sheet note, which is to get the cost and reach data. Why do we want that? It's because we need an AI write-up over here. So for an AI write-up to happen, you need it to prepare the data and send it to the LLM for analysis. So you go back to the N8N node over here. Once we have the data, I combine all the data into one single object, and then I have a code node here which is to prepare the cost reach analysis for the LLM. So if I click into here, I have the chart analysis date, I have the chart analysis historical data, latest month, previous month, I have the latest costs, I have last month's cost, I have last month's reach. So think about how I'm structuring all these into as neat categories as possible for the LLM for analysis. So after this, I then have a node here which is to analyze the cost and reach data. The historical monthly data is over here, last month's data is here, previous month's data is over here. I then have all these examples accordingly. So the example I have here is in August 2025, reach slightly decreased to X amount while cost increased to X amount, suggesting reduced efficiency compared to previous months. So this is where I will also emphasize that you need to provide an example of the perfect analysis that you have done before, right? Of course, when it comes to analyzing, do you want something that's extremely detailed or do you want something that's more big picture? This is where you can sort of fine-tune what you need based on what your clients want to see. In terms of the prompt I'm using here, in all transparency, I use an LLM to generate this. You are an experienced marketing analyst specializing in campaign efficiency. Your task is to analyze month-on-month trends in cost and reach based on the provided historical data and the latest period's changes. Generate a concise professional summary as 3 distinct bullet points focused on significant increases or decreases in reach, changes in cost, and any observed shifts in efficiency, i.e. more reach for less cost or less reach for more cost. Reference specific months, formatted values, and percentage changes from the provided data. Each bullet point must start off with a hyphen followed by a space, and each bullet point must be separated from the next by an empty line, 2 new line characters. Do not use any markdown formatting like bolding, italics, or additional asterisks. Present the output as plain text. Do not include any introductory or concluding sentences. So feel free to use this prompt if you want, but I'll also recommend you to tweak it based on your needs. After that, I then have a replace text in a presentation node where I then find a specific variable in my template. It looks for GS chart cost reach analysis text. You can see here in my template, GS chart cost reach analysis text. So basically this whole block will then be replaced by the analysis from the LLM. So this then automates the reporting for this slide over here. Alright, we then move on to the campaign performance, and you can see here it reports performance on a campaign layer. There's impression, clicks, cost per result, purchase, ROAS. Again, this really depends on what you need to report, because if it's a leads-based businesses, it will be slightly different, but the thought process is exactly the same. Before we move on to the campaign analysis over here, you would realize that I have a code node here which extracts only last month's data, because if you look at this template, right, this is, let's say, November 2025 reporting. It's only this slide that reports data from, let's say, 6 months beforehand, whereas the data in this slide only contains the data for last month. That's why I have a code node over here to extract only last month's data, because I don't want to analyze like 6 months worth of data. I have a HTTP request node over here. If you can see here, this is the get request I use. As a reminder here, make sure to use your specific ad account ID over here. And the fields here, it will be campaign name, impression, click, spends, action values, time range. This is specific to last month's only. As a reminder, then use your long-term token over here as well, and you need to get this via the Facebook app. After I pull the data, I then have a code node which transforms the raw data from the HTTP request to something that I just need. So you can see here, I have only 3 items, which is the campaign name, impression, clicks, cost per result, purchase, and ROAS. This is for e-commerce account. The objective of this code node is to transform the data from the API into something that I can easily automate into my template in a very neat manner. After I clean up the data from the API, you can see here the campaign name here is very clean. I then aggregate it into one item. You can see here that this node over here transforms the 3 items that I have into all these names over here. Then you might be saying, what are all these terms over here, right? You have campaign underscore R1, name, impression, clicks, cost, results. So every one of these rows, right, represent a variable that is in my template. So if I can show you my template, this is how it looks like. It looks very ugly. The whole point of it is to have each variable here tied to a placeholder here. After that, I'll then literally use a Google Slide node to replace the text, and the text is unique to the variable that is over here. Every one of these variables is over here, and you can see GS objective campaign analysis text. This will then come from the LLM node, of which will write some insights based on the data over here. This is the performance overview bullet point writer. Please analyze the following campaign performance data for the latest month. The campaigns are listed in descending order of their costs. So you have campaign 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you have all their respective metrics accordingly. The prompt is, you're an experienced marketing analyst specializing in campaign optimization. Your task is to analyze the provided list of individual digital marketing campaigns and their performance metrics. Generate a concise professional summary as 3 to 5 distinct bullet points. Focus on key observations such as, etc., etc. So I won't go through the whole thing. I'll emphasize again, the templates and insights that you want really depends on the examples you give it. And in full transparency, I'm actually just adjusting the prompts based on this generic template by Markifect. So you need to adjust the prompt based on what you want and what your client demands. You can see the text here, and this is the insights that I'm going to use and send back to the Google Slides. And you can see here, replace text in a presentation for campaign details. This is where it gets exciting, where there is a long list of metrics accordingly. So I must say it took me quite a bit of time to like copy paste to match each variable over here back to the template that I've automated for now. The moment you click this, then the insights will then be spit out to this template, and that's where you can automate it per se. Let's move on to the next slide, which is campaign objective. There are link click campaigns, there are sales campaigns, there are awareness campaigns. I have another section of this workflow dedicated to this slides. If you want to automate an additional slide, you then have to create a workflow for that particular slide itself. So this is the HTTP request node. Your URL is here. Make sure you change the ad account ID here accordingly. And you'll see that the main difference between the other nodes is that I have objective over here. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. You can see here the raw data from the API is actually quite overwhelming, and that's why I have code nodes that sort of clean it up. For this campaign objective slide, there are 2 things we need to automate. 1 would be the creation of the graph over here, and 2, you need to change these columns here based on a number of campaign objectives you have in your account. The first thing I do for the campaign objective slide is to send the data to the Excel sheet I have. So you can see here this slide, campaign objective. I then have the objectives over here. In this case, for this campaign, there's actually only one type of campaign objective, which is sales. I have the impressions, clicks, cost, results, and cost per results. After that, the creation of this graph is actually based on the columns over here. So the next thing I do is to then publish a chart. I need to find a chart ID to make sure what chart am I sending. I also need to know which spreadsheet ID I need to use. So you can see here for this node over here, it's important to have the right ID for the HTTP request to send the right chart over. So let me scroll down. You can see the spreadsheet ID is over here. The chart ID would match it when you are wanting to publish it. So let me publish this for now. Publish. So you can see the chart ID is 19313. 19313, 19313. Yep. So this matches, and you have the sixth slide. How do I get the sixth slide? I'll go here and then find this ID at the end over here. Think in terms of slides as IDs, presentation as IDs. Think of everything in IDs. It'll make it much clearer from an API standpoint. Make sure you test the X and Y axis just to make sure you automate the chart to be at the right place of the slide. You'll notice that after every HTTP request, I have a code node that then transforms the data into the neatest manner possible. So you can see here on the right, this is where it translates it to every single placeholder variable I have in my template. So you can see here, these are the placeholder variables I have, which matches what is over here. I then have another node to get the slides from the presentation, and I extract the sixth slide because I know that the sixth slide is the campaign objective slide. And I've already ran through this HTTP request node, which is to send the graph over to the specific Google slide over here. And basically you repeat the same process for the platform, placements, age, and gender. And I probably won't go through these in detail, but I would say the most important thing you need to get right is your API pool. You need to make sure that you pull the API correctly, but the thought process is exactly the same. First, I create the graph in the Excel sheet over here. I get the chart ID, and I need to make sure I know the spreadsheet ID, and I need to make sure that I send the correct thing over to the slide and make sure that the X and Y axis of the chart is where exactly you want it to be. So it's exactly the same for platform, placements, and age. So for platform, placements, age, and gender, I'll probably just show you the HTTP request just so that's maybe easier for you if you want to replicate it. So this is the pool for platform. You'll realize impression, clicks, spends, action values. And if I scroll down, you can see the breakdowns is publisher platform. This will tell you whether you're spending your ads on Instagram, Facebook, or Audience Network. Make sure you have your token over here as well. For the placements, this is also the same URL. Make sure to include your account ID over here. The main difference is you can see breakdowns. It'll be publisher, platform, platform position. So this is responsible for this slide over here, which is Instagram stories, feed, marketplace, Facebook Reels. It gives a more granular breakdown in terms of where your ads are spending at. Alright, moving on to age. This is the same URL. Make sure you put your account ID over here. And if I scroll down, the breakdowns is age. And if I move on to the next one, gender, the URL is the same, but if I scroll down, the breakdowns is gender. These will then populate the platform performance slide, the placement performance slide, the demographic slide. You can see here the age range is in text, and you can see the gender, it's a graph accordingly. And all these would then match every single sheet you see in the template here. Okay, moving on to the last one. This is one of the more tricky ones, which is to port the top 6 performing ads into your slides over here. So you can see here the top ads are Creative 0, Creative 1, Creative 2, and you can see Creative 4, 5, 6. You can see in my template, I've actually automated the ad name as well as the video URL on the Google Drive directly. And I must say that this is fully automated. Let me explain how I'm doing it. So from an automation standpoint, there are 2 parts again. Step 1 is to make sure you automate the population of text variables accordingly. So let me show you the template that I have prepared, right, based on Markifacts template. Creative 0 name, Creative 1 name, Creative 2 name. You can see spends, right? Spends results, cost per result, results value, all these are unique placeholders. What am I doing over here, right? First, I pull ads data from the API. The URL is exactly the same. I'm being a broken record by now, but make sure you refresh and put the right account ID here. Level, this is where I change it to ad. Fields, I have ad ID, ad name, objective, impression, click, spends, action, and action values. I have the time range accordingly. Make sure you use your long-term SX token gotten from Facebook directly. The next thing I do is extract the top 6 ads. So this is more of like a custom code that I've used. In all transparency, I've used AI to generate this code node for me. So I'll say a tip here, whenever you face troubles when it comes to automation, right? Just tell the AI the problem you're facing and how you want to transform your data into. It will actually be very helpful and translate the data which comes from the API, which is usually very overwhelming, into something that's very neat. So you can see here the output here is very neat. Creative index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have the creative name, objective, spend, results, purchase value, cost per result, ROAS, and image creative URL. This is where it gets a little tricky. When it comes to pulling ads data from your ads account, right, you can't actually use the normal token that you've been given. You need to use a page token. You cannot use a user token, you must use a page token. Go to Facebook Graph API, you need to get a separate token that's meant for accessing information on your page, because whatever ads that you launch, right, is actually attached to your page. So you need a page token rather than a user token. So there's the loop node here. Why do I put a loop node over here? It's because I've extracted the top 6 ads. I need to extract 6 files because I want to extract 6 files and then send 6 files to my Google Slides. The first step is to get a creative ID. You need to get your creative ID from the ad ID. So the ad ID is different from a creative ID. The ad ID is a particular ad in a particular ad set in a particular campaign, whereas a creative ID can be a specific video or image that can be used across different ads. So step 1, you want to get your creative ID over here. And you need to use your user token over here. And this is the HTTP request URL I'm using. And I got the creative ID. So the next step is to get the creative ID info. So you use your creative ID over here. You'll get the name, object type, video ID, and thumbnail URL. And you can see this loops for 6 times. So I have 6 video IDs I can use to extract. It will also give you the thumbnail URL. After which I have a consolidating output node. After that, then I have a switch function here to then see if it's an image or video, because the way you handle images and video will be slightly different. In all transparency, I'm still working towards fine-tuning the image flow. So this flow actually does not work for image ads, but it does work for video ads. So what I do is I get the raw source file URL. This gives me the source of that particular ad that is performing. If I can also give a caveat over here, this is where you need to use a page token over here. And a page token is associated with the page that you're drawing the ads from and running the ads under. The reason why I want to extract this is because this is a short-lived URL. I believe it will expire like within a few hours. That's the reason why I have another HTTP request node to then get the file. In this case, it's an MP4 file. I then get the file and then I upload it to Google Drive. After I upload it to Google Drive, I then have a specific Google ID. And once I have a specific Google ID, I then can just use it to send to Google Slides via API. So that's where I am customizing this workflow accordingly, because if you send raw videos directly to Google Slides, right, it'll be slightly different. I might be wrong here, but given that Google Drive and Google Slides is like the same ecosystem, right, it's easier if you upload it to Google Drive and then automate it from Google Drive to Google Slides. Alright, so after the 6 files run, I have a merge node over here to sort of consolidate everything that I need based on ad ID. After I get the 6 items, I then aggregate it into one single item. I then have a set node that categorizes creative 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is meant to be automated to the templates over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One thing I must highlight here, whenever you are sending data via the Google Slides node, everything needs to be in string. It can't be a number, it can't be an object, it can't be an array, and it needs to be a string. Everything that I've put here, I have adjusted it to only output string variables. And you can see that these variables will then match every single metric and placeholder that I have on my template. The easiest thing to do is then replace the text in the ad section. And basically, I am finding all these variables over here and then replacing the variables with what I want from my previous set node. So you can see here, creative 0 spends, creative 0 results, creative 0 CPR, and the list goes on and on for all 6 creatives. After that, then I have these HTTP request node. Every single node here inserts one video preview accordingly. Each of these videos over here are sent by each and every one of these nodes. So if I can click into one of them, this is the HTTP request URL I'm using. Make sure you dynamically take your PowerPoint ID to make sure that you choose the right file to automate it to. And if I scroll down, let me show you the JSON of which I'm sending over. You can see here, it says create video. The source is Drive. You just need to put the variable of the Google Drive ID. The page object ID, this is the slide ID, okay? A slide ID is not to be confused with the PowerPoint ID. The PowerPoint ID is something like this. The slide ID will be something like this over here. Similar to automating charts, you need to make sure you test the X and Y axis of the video accordingly. If not, it will like just send it everywhere. Let me give some concluding thoughts, right? In general, I will say I'm not actually a super big fan of these templates, and I actually just created just as a challenge for myself to see if I can learn the Google Slides API. I do know that reporting is a very personal thing to every single media buyer agency. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.